a lot of time collectively reflecting on how she approached her training. She made a fresh suite of new commitments to say, okay, when I go back here, perhaps the areas that I was not quite as good as you would potentially hope for, let's really make those gold standard. So going very simple stuff, going really easy on the easy days, integrating blocks of recovery so that we could leverage effectiveness from the very hard work that was prerequisite to actually go and be a world-class athlete, and shift her whole mindset really away from chasing total accumulation of hours or miles to really thinking about effective work and how can I build the next year of training with the most effective work possible. So that was a repositioning of her whole mental approach to training. And then the third big category that she really dialed in was everything under the banner of strength. And when I first started coaching Sarah, we had sent her down to the Red Bull Performance Center and they had assessed her strength, her explosiveness, her balance and core stability, her mobility around all joints. And relative to the thin air of world class competition, she actually ranked very low on all of those. So she wasn't naturally highly strong, highly explosive, really mobile. And those were all limiters. And so she was determined, now that she couldn't chase, swim, bike, or run, she was determined to reimagine herself as a global athlete and doubled down, got a fantastic strength and conditioning coach, and really played a additional focus and emphasis on that part of her journey. And so those were the three big categories. And as she came back from repair to movement to exercise to training to finally training that is required to go and be a world class athlete, that long journey of progression that really took more than a year of development until she should truly race again. She took all of these elements as the anchor points, the foundation of her athleticism. She took a very cautious and patient build. Now, the truth is that out of this catastrophe that occurred for her emerged a wonderful opportunity, because I don't think Sarah would ever have had the jolt, almost the slap in the face, to shift these behaviors around these big areas with her approach, because everything was kind of working well. She was improving. And so while everything paused for about a year, as she built her way back, that was the catalyst for her to go from a good athlete to a truly world class athlete. And over the course of the next 3 years, she got faster and faster and faster. And all of her Ironman victories, when she had a wonderful Dreamlight performance where she finished the second fastest Ironman time ever for a US female athlete, and her top tens at the Hawaii Ironman World Championship, all emerged out of this adversity. And the reason that I start with this story in the show today is that I don't want you to break your femur. And we don't have to go through massive injury cycles to get the slap in the face. But we can draw from the lessons of what occurred with Sarah there. Because the way that you can approach the time of the year when you're not training specifically for the demands of racing, aka off season, when you have these months that are a little bit lower of physical stress, a little bit less emotional load, this is the opportunity to, quote, do a Sarah Piampiano, reinvent yourself a little bit, and go through, for me, what I've identified 4 key areas that are golden opportunities for you to set yourself up over the next 2 to 3 months so that you are more resilient, more robust, and more immune from niggles and injuries that can create so many setbacks. And so I want to go through each of these and apply them. Okay. Let's first talk about habit development. This is number one. This is a huge component. Remember, we talked about Sarah, habits, sleep, fueling, etc., etc. It's really, really important. Foundational habits matter. They are the catalyst of your success. And the truth is, when it relates to injury prevention, It doesn't start with some new fancy training technique. It actually starts with the basics, the things that you have to do every day anyway. And so you might as well put some intention behind those things that you do every day anyway. And so let's just simply outline them. It's very simple. Number one, sleep. You are applying a physiological stress to your body when you train. And by putting that stress on the body, you are forcing adaptations. The vast majority of your adaptations occur with sleep. Now, you are doing this as a time starved athlete in the midst of a whole bunch of competing demands across all of your life, whether it comes in work, whether it comes with family, whether it comes with travel, that are adding other stresses on top of your life. So you have a stress filled environment and you're placing a stress on your body that you're chasing positive adaptations to get fitter, stronger, faster, etc. But when your body cannot recover adequately and cannot yield those adaptations, and then there could be a negative adaptation. And that negative adaptation could be accumulated fatigue, could be systemic stress, as I went through, as with my crashing and burning as a professional athlete, or of course, it can be injury. Your number one recovery tool that you have to set you up for really positive training, maximal adaptations, and of course, immunity, or at least close to immunity of injury risk, is sleep. It is when your body builds strength, repairs itself, fortifies against future stress. So it is your stress processing machine. And when you are under slightly less training load, aka the off season, this is a great time for you to build habits over the course of the coming months that consistently can get both the duration of your sleep and the quality of your sleep up to snuff. Now, I want to talk about this a little bit because on my finger, I have one of those wearables, an Aura ring, and maybe you capture your sleep data, maybe something in the mattress or a Whoop band or an Apple Watch or a Garmin, whatever it might be. And one of the things and the trends that I see with a lot of athletes that loyally follow and track their sleep score every single night, looking at the duration of their sleep, the quality of their sleep, how much deep sleep they get, how much REM sleep that they have. And perhaps you've had your wearable device that you've been tracking sleep for 2 years. Let's just make it up. My biggest question is always, okay, what have you changed in your hygiene or your practice or your approach to sleep over the course of the last 2 years? And the vast majority of people that wear these devices, myself included, look at it every day, but don't make any changes. So, where is the value of that? If you consistently are averaging 6.5 hours sleep, what changes are you making to prioritize your number one recovery tool, your number one de stressor, your number one bolster of fortification against injury is sleep? So, what are you doing to change that? And maybe over the course of the coming months, when you have less training load, it's a chance to develop a new habit around sleep. Whereas if you go back and you look over the last month, and perhaps you've averaged 6.5 hours, maybe you can move that up to 7, maybe 7 hours and 15 minutes, maybe 7 hours and a half, something along those lines where you are progressing gradually, where sleep is taking a more dominant part of your everyday life. And it's a really valuable tool. So many people chase magical interventions, but most of the time, simple habit building is the biggest catalyst. And so, if you over the course of the next year want to break the injury cycle, the first thing around habit development is looking at your sleep and making changes and developing really positive sleep habits if you're not doing so already. So, that's number one. Now, some of the things that you can do there are really, really simple. Primary one, the most important thing, as consistently as you can, be consistent about your sleep schedule. Go to bed at around the same time every night. That is the number one thing that we can do to control and improve our sleep quality. Now, sometimes you might have a holiday party, you might be traveling for work, whatever it might be, but generally, as a rhythm, You want to try and have 25 of your 30 days every month be good sleep quality. And if you can go to bed at a similar time every single night, and then it's potent. You want to get at least 7, but as an athlete, hopefully 8 hours plus a night of sleep as well. That means that you need to be in bed for 8.5 plus hours every single night. That's really, really important. And then try and consume your last meal that you have, your last big meal, at least 2 or 3 hours before bedtime so that the body can get into that deep sleep and rejuvenation. So these are some of the things that you can do around sleep that are going to actually help you. And if we're thinking about it as breaking the injury cycle, it's there for the taking. It's a wonderful time of the year to start to build this habit in. Really, really important. Okay. A second big area around habit development is nutrition. This is really important. I'm going to bucket this up in two big areas. Number one, nutrition. Number two, hydration. So your nutritional habits fuel your tissue repair, your recovery, and your adaptations. And so you want to ensure that you're consuming balanced meals, rich in protein, plenty of healthy fats, and a ton of micronutrients, fibers, 8 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables every single day. And that's quite a challenge to do it. Generally, the rule of thumb, eating your body weight of protein, it's a good thing to help with tissue repair. And also, don't be scared of carbohydrates. Now, there is a myriad of different eating choices, diets, allergies out there. There's also a blizzard of contradictory information and recommendations. The key thing as an athlete is you don't want to go on a diet. You want to build lasting habits and you want to do things that are not shackling. You can't be a prisoner of your own eating habits. The team that we use at Purple Patch is Fuelin. If you want to work with Scott and his team over at Fuelin, they are absolute world experts. They are all about habit development. They're about filtering down into very basic and simple, repeatable patterns, aligning your caloric needs with your training program that you're adhering to, whether it's off season, whether, of course, it's the run up to a key race. They're a fantastic team. Highly recommend them. Fuelin.com is the website. Put a backslash and purple patch afterwards. You're going to get filtered through to the purple patch arm of the page, fuelin.com/purple patch. Of course, there are many other great nutritionists and dietitians out there. I would just really recommend that if you are looking outside of that team at Fuelin, that you do really ensure that they understand your approach of all of the stresses that you have in life and your requirements as an athlete, and ensure that you're following a program that is thinking about developing a platform of health, injury resiliency, and athletic performance. So you don't want just guidance on daily eating plans for body composition changes. We really want to support your training load with appropriate habit development. So this is really, really key component. And then the third area around habits, talking about this first category that we talk about here, I would label it as stress management. Physical performance is directly tied to mental well-being. And there are a couple of things that you can do to help you actually stabilize, improve your cognitive function, and ensure that you're getting your body out of the parasympathetic state into a really calm state. And these are really simple things. I think that everybody who is high performing, and the higher up you go in organizations, the more important this is. If you can take a 10 to 15-minute reset in the middle of the day, it's high potency, high value. Reset, if you want to call it a nap, you can, but you don't need to fall asleep for it to be valuable. But in the day, calming down, giving yourself a little 10 to 15 minutes that you lie down, something over the face to take the light out, or in a dark room, it's a potent catalyst of growth hormone, repair, and productivity in the afternoon. Equal to that, having some form of, and I'll use this in a very loose term, mindfulness as you're winding down towards bed. You get off of the computer, you get off of the phone. You can watch a little TV if you want, as a little bit of downtime. Get into bed, read a paper book or a Kindle, something with not too much bright light. Start to bring the system down. That runway into bed is really, really important habit and a good time to actually integrate that into your life. So that's the first category that we're really diving down, is just very simply habit creation. And it is a key catalyst if you want to really set up for the year ahead, your body being more immune and more fortified against injuries. What about category number two? Well, this is strength training. So, in other words, beyond really prioritizing sleep and building really good habits in nutrition, you want to build a robust body. Ultimately, strength training is a non negotiable. Now, you've heard me on this show say that I don't like to talk about strength as being the thing of injury prevention because, as you're finding out right now, people don't get injured because they do or do not do strength. But it is a key tool for not only performance enhancement, so helping you go faster, as well as improving the quality of your life and how you can function in all of your daily life activities. But it is also a catalyst as a tool to help you prevent injury. And so we need to have its own category here to talk about it. A really strong, resilient body is resistant to the demands of endurance sports. It is critical in the off season, but it isn't about just gaining strength or gaining power. It's about bulletproofing the body. That's what we're doing here. And when we think about strength and conditioning, when you start to adhere to any program that you want to, there are several categories that you think about. Number one, human beings are designed to lift heavy things. So you do want to do some progressive overload work against resistance. And this might start with the basics. This might be body weight exercises for some of us, but gradually introduce more weight or resistance as well as greater complexity of movements so that you can drive through greater strength gains. And in general, an emphasis around more compound movements like squats, lunges, deadlifts that mimic the full body demands of your running, cycling, and swimming is going to be very, very helpful. So, there is strength is one big category. You also want to develop some overall athleticism and get the body really, really robust around all of the stabilizing and supporting muscles. So, doing a lot of exercises that integrate stability and challenge with coordination and balance, all of those small muscle groups that support the larger movements. And so, there's a whole category under core work, glute activation and strengthening, balance drills that can enable you to have a really strong foundation that when you do go and run, the body is stabilized more and it's much less likely to get injured because of the overuse of the prime drivers and muscle groups. And then finally, the forgotten child is mobility so that you can maintain your joint range of motion. This is incredibly important to areas that are prone to tightness, like your hips for a lot of endurance athletes, as well as folks that spend too much time sitting at the desk and sitting in the car or on aeroplanes, and your neck and shoulders. Really important driving from the pecs, so your chest muscles to your armpits, as well as all the way around the neck and the traps in the back and the shoulders. Doing some exercise to keep those joints really mobile and free, like a gate that doesn't get rusty, is going to help you with your movement patterns and ensure that you can stay injury free. There's lots of ways to encompass or incorporate all of these elements. In the Purple Patch Strength Program, which is available for non-Purple Patch athletes, I should point out, I don't mean that as much of a promotional aspect, but we have a video-based strength program that many non-coached Purple Patch athletes leverage. It's a great time to start that, by the way. You can plug it in 2 to 3 sessions a week that you can follow on by video that encompasses all of these components. But you might want to instead go and do yoga, which is okay, but it's missing some of the components. So then you want to include some strength. Pilates, it's really, really good for a few components of it. It's missing some of the progressive overload. So there are different tools out there. And of course, working with a personal trainer, that's wonderful, as long as they understand the overall athleticism and they're not just trying to get you stronger for CrossFit or something like that. But globally, the call to action is this is the time of the year when you're not chasing core fitness drivers of swim, bike, and run, that it's a great time to build the habit and the prioritization of strength and conditioning. Now, strength and conditioning has a heightened emphasis for more mature athletes and female athletes. But make no mistake, We all need to do strength, period. We all need to do strength. This is a wonderful time to commence your journey. Strength is not something that you just do in the off season. Just by going through 2 to 3 months of strength work now and then forgetting about it is not going to make you more resistant to injury. But starting it now without the shackles of getting ready for swim, bike, and run, fitness, and driving on the area is the runway that you need to then incorporate it in your year ahead for your program. So you want to do it now. And that's big category number 2. The third component that we're going to talk about is tissue resilience. And this is what I like to call a run project. If you're a runner or a triathlete, then building tissue resilience is a wonderful project to take on when you're not having to do threshold intervals, high intensity, or accumulate massive mileage. So, why does tissue resiliency matter? And it's really your body's ability to absorb the stresses of repeated impact over time. And without it, injury risk absolutely skyrockets. So once you've gone through your last race of the season, you have a little bit of downtime and repair. I love athletes to go through what we call a run project, but basically high frequency running that's easier. So during the off season, this is a really good little project for you to take on. And what you want to do is prioritize consistency over intensity. So, over the course of the coming months, your speed work or high intensity running, there is speed work in other aspects if you're a multi sport athlete or if you leverage multi sport to get ready for running. But in the running specifically, most of it is very, very easy. But you want to run very, very frequently. Now, that can be different for different people, but I like to build people up to running almost daily. But most of the runs that you're doing are relatively short, low intensity, and can incorporate walk breaks into the program. And really, what you're doing here is you're not aiming for a driver of running speed or running fitness. Instead, what the right mental approach to this is think about creating a stimulus that is not enough to impair your running mechanics or create lasting fatigue, but instead just places enough stress to build tissue resilience. In other words, strengthen your muscles, your tendons, and ligaments from your hips down through your knees, through your ankles.